Okay, so let's jump right in. We're going to dive into this really fascinating case study from a letter written about 2,000 years ago that, you won't believe it, has some incredibly modern lessons about community, freedom, and what it really means to be right.
I mean, just think about that for a second. Have you ever been in that spot, that tension, that feeling of being 100% correct, but knowing that if you push it, if you exercise your right to be right, it could actually cause some real damage? Well, that's the exact problem we're going to unpack today.
So let's set the scene. We're in first century Corinth, and you gotta picture this place. It's a bustling, cosmopolitan Roman city. It's a major trade hub, it's a total melting pot, full of temples, idols, and this brand new, kind of struggling community of Christians who are just trying to figure out how to live.
And at the heart of their problem is meat. Seriously. But this wasn't just about what's for dinner. This was a massive theological and social issue. See, in a city like Corinth, you couldn't avoid idolatry. It was baked into the culture. And this meat, a staple of their diet, became the center of this huge, messy community fight.
So you've got these two camps, right? On one side, you have who Paul calls the strong. These are probably the more educated folks, the ones who get it. Their thinking is clear. Hey, idols are just statues, they're nothing. There's only one true God. So the meat is just meat. They felt completely free to eat it. But then, on the other side, you had the weak. For them, that meat was still contaminated, still connected to its past. Eating it felt wrong, and even seeing their friends do it, it seriously bothered their conscience.
So, into this messy conflict steps the Apostle Paul. And his approach is, well, it's brilliant. He doesn't start by taking a side on who's factually correct. Instead, he just completely flips the script. He introduces a totally different way of looking at the problem. It's not about who's right, he says, it's about what builds people up.
And check this out. Paul starts by doing something totally unexpected. He actually agrees with the strong. He's basically like, you know what? You're right. Your knowledge is spot on. You can see it right there in the first part of the quote. But then comes the pivot. The problem isn't the knowledge. The problem is that not everyone has that knowledge. And that's the crack in the foundation of their community.
So Paul's entire argument, his whole solution to this incredibly complex cultural and theological mess, it all boils down to one single core principle that outweighs everything else.
And that principle? It's love. But hold on, we're not talking about some warm, fuzzy feeling here. For Paul, love isn't an emotion, it's an action. It's the central ethic for how a community should work. It's an active choice to build each other up, even if, and this is the hard part, even if it means you have to limit your own freedom for somebody else.
And to prove this isn't just some high-minded theory, Paul puts his own life on the table as Exhibit A. He uses himself, an apostle, a guy with a pretty privileged position, as the ultimate example of this principle in action.
I mean, just look at this list. Paul lays out all the things he was totally entitled to: financial support for his work, food and drink, even the right to get married. He had every right to claim these privileges, just like the strong Corinthians were claiming their right to eat meat. He was in a position of power for sure.
But did he use those rights? Nope. And here's the kicker. He says he chose not to. He voluntarily set aside what he was owed for something bigger, the good of the community and the progress of the gospel. He's showing them that real strength isn't about flexing your freedom. It's about knowing when and why to lay it down. Now, just to make sure the Corinthians are really getting the message, Paul reaches back into their shared history books for a powerful story about the dangers of misusing freedom and privilege. He reminds them of the story of ancient Israel in the wilderness. He's like, remember them? They had incredible spiritual privileges. God was literally feeding them from the sky. But they took it all for granted. They became selfish. And in the end, they were disqualified. The warning here is crystal clear. Don't you dare think that your special knowledge or your spiritual status makes you immune to the consequences of being selfish. Okay, so after laying all this heavy theological groundwork, Paul gets incredibly practical. And hidden in his practical advice is this profound insight into how our conscience actually works, an idea that, honestly, a lot of us still get wrong today. His rules are surprisingly simple. You're in the market, buy the meat, eat it, don't ask questions. You're at a friend's house for dinner, eat whatever they put in front of you. But, and this is the absolute key, if someone there objects, if they say, hey, I think that meat was offered to an idol, then you abstain. You don't eat it. Not for your sake, for theirs. And this leads to a brilliant insight about what our conscience really is. It's not some mystical voice of God dictating new rules to you. No, it's a God-given capacity for self-critique. It's an internal witness, like an alarm system, that goes off when your actions don't line up with the worldview and values you already hold. And this slide just nails the difference. A guide leads you. It tells you where to go. A monitor, on the other hand, just observes and reports on what's happening. Your conscience doesn't create your values. It just monitors if you're living consistently with them. Which means if your worldview is flawed, your conscience could be perfectly clear even when you're doing something terribly wrong.
And if you don't believe me, listen to Paul himself. In another part of the very same letter, he says this. He's basically saying, look, as far as I know, I haven't done anything wrong. My conscience doesn't bother me. But that's not the final judgment. A clear conscience is not the ultimate standard of what is right. That is huge.
So, let's bring all this home. What started as a messy debate about food in an ancient city reveals this timeless, powerful principle that goes way, way beyond what's for dinner.
This is it. This is the bottom line. Your freedom, your knowledge, your rights. As important as they are not the most important thing. The most important thing is the well-being of the people around you. The health of the community trumps individual privilege, every single time.
Paul wraps it all up with this powerful command. Every single action, even something as simple as eating and drinking, needs to be filtered through this lens. Does this build other people up? Does it honor God? Or could this cause someone else to stumble?
And that leaves us with a really challenging question for today, doesn't it? I mean, we live in a culture that is absolutely obsessed with individual rights, personal freedom, and being right. So what would happen? What would change in our politics, on social media, even in our own families, if we adapted this Corinthian ethic? What if we truly decided that building up our community was more important than winning the argument? It's a 2,000-year-old question that, man, feels more relevant than ever.